Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 52, coming at you on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon from the Valley. Getting ready to head to one of three Angels games here against the Diamondbacks. Go watch my Halos, do some work maybe. Both teams are struggling, should be some fun. But yeah, excited about this episode of our weekly MMA podcast. We're going to recap UFC Louisville, preview the UFC Apex, I believe it's UFC Fight Night Vegas 93, and talk about some fights that have been booked. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. Let's jump right in. So, we have Drew Dober and Mike Davis booked for the July 13th card in Denver. Always love me a nice Drew Dober banger. We have Azat Maxim taking on CJ Vergara August 3rd. Also at flyweight, Alan Nascimento and Rafael Filho on the August 10th card. And then two solid fights here for September 7th. We have Calvin Kattar and Kyle Nelson, and somewhat of a surprise booking. A big step up for Kyle Nelson. And although not official, both fighters have agreed. Looks like this should be the next fight. Gilbert Burns and Sean Brady, two grapplers getting after it in an awesome fight. Elsewhere in MMA news, Mark DeCasey off the UFC roster and is signing officially with the PFL, so they get some more ex-UFC blood. And then the UFC adding a new signing, risen bantamweight champion Kai Asakura, who is a young stud that people are very high on coming to the UFC. And they're talking about matching him in the top 15 right away so we could see what he's all about. And then officially the Mike Tyson-Jake Paul boxing bout rescheduled for fall November 15th. A big change from July for the people that had bought tickets and had planned a trip to Fort Worth. And then Gordon Ryan, who has been out for quite some time from Submission Grappling, the number one grappler, is booked for a match June 20th, a quick turnaround fight here in a couple weeks. Before his ADCC appearance, he's been battling a lot of stomach issues that's well documented, but he's healthy enough to get a tune-up match. And also, this past week in LFA, I didn't look at a lot of the other fights, but Richie Lewis with the dominant unanimous decision to get the lightweight strap for LFA. So now Titan FC belt, LFA belt, really excited to see what happens for him next, if he could get matched up in Contender or set up here for the UFC. Another collegiate wrestler from Rutgers looking to make waves in the MMA world. But let's talk about the crazy, chaotic card that went down in Louisville. Picks-wise, I went 9-4, another solid night in the office. Puts me at 323 wins, 160 losses, with 6 no contests and draws, and for this year, 2024, 130 wins, 74 losses, 3 no contests or draws. So, recapping the card, quick little recap. I would say the prelims were definitely mixed and slow. The fans did show out at another fight night that was location-based. I expected that after the Chicago card. And the main card had a lot of quick finishes, but the main event kind of sucked some of the air out with the bad stoppage that we'll talk about later. But overall, I'll give it for a fight night a 6.5 out of 10. I thought it was better than the 302 card in Newark. Good fight we did not break down. Carlos Prats with a round 1 TKO over Charles Radke. Performance of the night, 50 Gs. Nice knee to the body, shut down Charles Radke. And then it went viral of Carlos Prats smoking some cigs right after for celebration. Brazil does it different. But we're going to kick it off in the prelims. As expected, Taylor Lapilus with the unanimous decision over Cody Stamann. And this was a pretty lopsided fight where Taylor kept Cody at range, was able to pick him apart with that length as expected. Somewhat surprising to me, Cody only got 1 takedown. He didn't try his best, I would say. He wasn't able to control distance and close range, but he finally got that takedown in round 3, which was definitely too late as he was already down 2 rounds on the scorecards. Pretty tough night in the office for Cody Stamann. Another solid performance by Taylor. Statistically, Cody landed 64 total strikes, 59 of those significant. He had 1 takedown in 6 attempts, and 3 minutes and 24 seconds of control time, compared to Taylor's 107 total strikes, 100 of those significant, so almost doubled up on the volume there. So Taylor starts a new winning streak. He moves to 2-1 in the UFC, and Cody extends his losing streak to 2. He is 2-3 since 2022. What's next for these bantamweights? Well, I think a fight that makes a ton of sense timing-wise would be Daniel Marcos and Taylor Lapilus. Daniel also got a win on this card. And for Cody, if he's still in the UFC, how about Ronnie Yahya? I think that would be a good fight for both men. Moving on, a classic Brad Katona fight here as he got a unanimous decision over Jesse Butler. And this had the Katona stamp all over it as, you know, he pretty much grappled and wrestled his way to victory. When the fight was standing, he was getting pieced up with some good power strikes. So he continually took Butler down, controlled him throughout the fight. I wouldn't say a lot of beautiful ground and pound, mostly just trying to control position and top control. But he was on top while avoiding submission attempts, so you got to give him credit there. But pretty boring grappling win. I saw on X, like, Brad Katona's the type of guy that would be on a 5-fight winning streak and be cut from the UFC, and that's just kind of where he is. I mean, I thought they would give him a lot better opponent. I believe his opponent got changed short notice here. But over a guy like Jesse Butler, who Jim Miller finished in 23 seconds, he got to go out and get a finish, and that was completely the opposite of what he did. But he did land 148 total strikes, 68 of those significant. He had 3 takedowns and 10 minutes and 50 seconds of control time, so more than 2 rounds completely. And Jesse landed 32 total and 30 significant strikes. So Brad starts a new winning streak. He is 4-1 since 2022. And Jesse extends his losing streak to 2. He's now 0-2 in the UFC. I think for Brad, he's not going to get a super exciting matchup with performances like that. But how about a fight with Alan Tengeli? And for Jesse, if he's still in the UFC, he could fight young up-and-comer Cameron Simon. Then we had the rematch, an underdog, your boy got right. Montana De La Rosa with a split decision victory over Andrea Lee. And this was a very, very close rematch. And after the first round, both women kind of looked like they were just in mud, really fighting in slow motion. But Montana did more throughout the fight. She did have a more well-rounded attack to get a path to victory. And by round 3, her striking actually was opening up pretty good. She was getting confident with it. And by round 3, Angela just didn't seem to have a lot to give. She's really fallen off the past couple years, and I don't know if that's just from determination, skill, and ability with age. But this was definitely a slow-moving fight, so to speak. Now, statistically, Andrea landed 115 total strikes, 75 of those significant, and I would say a good portion of that was in the first round. She did have 2 reversals and 2 minutes and 8 seconds of control time and was 0-2 in takedown attempts. But Montana landed 88 total strikes, 70 of those significant. She had 3 takedowns and 6 attempts, so it was 50%, which you can't be mad about that. And she had a submission attempt and 2 minutes and 9 seconds of control time. So Montana ends her 3-fight winning streak, starts a new winning streak. Her first win since 2021 has to be sweet. And Andrea extends her losing streak to 5. She hasn't won since November of 2021. So where did these ladies go next? I think for Montana, Antonina Shevchenko would be a good fight, but she's been not very active. So if not, how about Marina Moroz? And I honestly doubt that Andrea is going to be in the UFC, especially after that performance. But if she is, she could take on Juliana Miller. Moving on in the prelim headliner, we had a brilliant showing, a fight I picked wrong here, but was a 50-50 fight. We had Ludovic Klein with a unanimous decision over Thiago Moises. And what an all-out performance by Klein here. I mean, he was able to defend Thiago's takedown attempts, which are usually pretty successful. Not only that, but he was able to out-grapple and wrestle him with his own offense. He was able to get takedowns while pretty much just destroying him on the feet. And I personally think this, hands down, was a coming-out performance by Ludovic. And for Thiago, this really kind of puts him in a bad spot and harsh reality. But what a performance. 3 rounds, 15 minutes of just taking it to Thiago. Statistically, Thiago only landed 25 total strikes, and 24 of those significant. He had 1 submission attempt and was 0 for 8 in takedown attempts. And a lot of them weren't very clean. They were deep blast double legs, which are very hard to accomplish in the UFC. And Ludovic wasn't going to let it happen. I was expecting him to maybe go into a single, run the pipe. That didn't happen. But Ludovic landed 86 total strikes, 56 of those significant, so more than doubled. He had 2 knockdowns, a takedown, and 3 minutes and 8 seconds of control time. So now Ludovic extends his winning streak to 5. He's also had a draw. Really changed his career since going to lightweight. And Thiago starts a new losing streak. He is 3-2 since 2022. So what's next? I would love to see Ludovic take on Diego Ferreira. I think that would be an absolute banger. And for Thiago, how about a scrap with Joe Selecki? Moving on to the main card, a coming out party for Punahele Soriano, man. He got the unanimous decision over Miguel Baeza. And welcome to the welterweight division. This was his welterweight debut, and it was the best performance he's had by far in his UFC career, in my opinion. He really went to his wrestling roots in this fight, and boy, did it pay dividends. Miguel really wasn't able to get anything going at all in this fight, and Puna just bullied him. Puna also mentioned that there was a thought of potential retirement before this fight, so this definitely had to be a confidence booster, and the stats will tell that story. I mean, Miguel only landed 22 total strikes, only 7 significant. He had 3 submission attempts and was 0 for 2 in takedown attempts. And Puna landed 331 total strikes, 144 of those significant. He was 5 for 6 in takedowns. If he wanted it, he got it. And he had 10 minutes and 58 seconds of control time. A lot of that was having Miguel up against the cage and just going to town. But 331 strikes, 5 takedowns and 6 attempts, 2 full rounds of control time. Have a day, Punahele. So Puna puts a quick stop to that 2-fight losing streak and starts a new winning streak. He's 2-3 since 2022. Obviously now 1-0 at the welterweight division. And Miguel extends his losing streak to 4. He hasn't won since November of 2020. So, if Miguel does fight in the UFC again, I think a fight with the OG vet, Court McGee, would be ideal. And for Puna, let's just book him an absolute banger against Li Jingliang. I'm all for it. Moving on, we had Zachary Reese making slight work with a quick round 1 knockout over Julian Marquez. Performance of the night, 50 G's for Zach. And this fight did not last very long at all. Zach was going to kill or be killed, and he got the kill shot. Julian only landed 1 total insignificant strike. Zachary landed 6 total insignificant. A nice big combo. Mean uppercut straight to Julian's beard that sat him down. So Zach starts a new winning streak. He's 2-1 in the UFC. Julian extends his losing streak to 3. He has not won since April of 2021. A lot of fighters desperately fighting for their UFC lives after losses on this card. But if Julian is in the UFC, he could fight AJ Dobson. And for Zachary, how about a scrap with Dustin Stoltzfus, who also fought on this card, and we'll chat about here next. Brilliant display for Zachary Reese. He was hyped up. Get the blood flowing. Speaking about getting the blood flowing, what a freaking scrap this was. Bruno Ferreira with a round 1 TKO over Dustin Stoltzfus. Performance of the night, 50 G's to the Hulk. And this fight was entertaining from the jump. Both men rocked each other early. Bruno was just able to outlast and land some nasty spinning elbows that completely smoked Dustin. I think I saw on social media somewhere this week, like, the spinning elbow that landed had really destroyed Dustin's head or given him concussions or some crazy lasting effects. But this guy hits hard, and man, were those spinning techniques on the button and beautifully displayed after Bruno got rocked and Dustin was feeling comfortable trying to go for the finish himself. Probably 4 minutes of just absolute chaos in the first round. Statistically, Bruno landed 27 total strikes, 24 of those significant with the knockdown, and Dustin landed 20 total, 18 of those significant. He had 1 takedown in 2 attempts, 2 submission attempts, and 1.5 minutes of control time. So Bruno extends his winning streak to 2. He is now a very impressive 4-1 in the UFC, and Dustin starts a new losing streak. He is 2-2 since 2022. What's next? Well, I already talked about Dustin taking on Zachary. I think that's the fight to make. And for Bruno, how about a ranked match with Chris Curtis later this fall? That would be an absolute banger. Moving on, the young blood Raul Rosas Jr. with a round 2 submission via rear naked choke over Ricky Tercios. Another performance of the night. 50 G's for the young man. He was talking about buying his mom a house. But the fight was very high pace, as you would expect with these two. Both of them go 0-100 in their fights in the first place. But Ricky was firing away shots, and because he was throwing so much volume, he left his hips open for easy takedowns, and Raul was able to control Ricky decently throughout the fight. I mean, Ricky's a wily guy, got up a couple times, but he was eventually able to keep him down, find his neck early in the second round. And Ricky, since the fight, has come out and let us know that he had a knee injury and was sick like 48 hours before the fight. And I know that that's not a good thing, but I'm not sure if he would have had much of a different outcome. As the way the fight looked, Raul was going to get those takedowns, was going to control him. His cardio was much improved over the course of a fight, and Ricky would have had to land a kill shot, in my opinion. But Ricky needed to keep that high pace. He needed to get deep in the third round to have a chance. Raul didn't seem like he was going to gas in this fight, though. He's really put a stamp on his cardio. Statistically, Raul landed 25 total strikes, only 3 significant, but was 4 for 7 in takedown attempts. He had a submission attempt, a reversal, and 5 minutes and 49 seconds of control time. So controlled a lot of the fight while it lasted, as it lasted about a round and a half, and he had almost 6 minutes of control time. And Ricky landed 64 total, so about 3 times the amount that Raul landed, and only 7 of those were significant. He had a submission attempt as well. So Raul extends his winning streak to 2. He is 4-1 in the UFC, and Ricky starts a new losing streak. He is 1-2 since 2022. So what's next? Well, I think Raul still needs to be slow played here. He's still a young lad, like 19 years old. I think a fight with John Castaneda would be a good next step. And for Ricky, he could fight Damon Blackshear. I think stylistically, that is an absolute beautiful display. And really the highlight of the evening for me, Dominic Reyes with a round 1 TKO over Dustin Jacoby. This originally wasn't a performance, but Dominic had reached out to Dana on social media, and he ended up giving it to him. So 50 G's for the return of the Dominator. And Dominic, classic Dom style, was able to pressure Dustin, a very good kickboxer, cut the cage off, and land the big-time shots to get the first round finish, which is not easy to do in this division, let alone a veteran stud kickboxer and Dustin Jacoby. Really, throughout the fight, Dustin was just trying to fend Reyes off, kind of create space, land his own big shots. He just wasn't able to get it done. This fight didn't last super long. Statistically, it took Dominic 20 total insignificant strikes with 2 knockdowns, and Dustin only landed 6 total insignificant strikes. So Dominic puts a quick end to that sucky 4-fight losing streak. He starts a new winning streak, his first win since October of 2019, and he moves up 2 spots in the rankings to number 13. Hell yeah, Dominic Reyes. Now, Dustin extends his losing streak to 2. He is 3-4 since 2022. Where does Dom go next? Well, I think you could already get excited and throw him up with some major fights, but I think we keep him back on track, give him a fight later this year. I'd like to see him take on Bogdan Guskov, who has been a finishing machine as well and should be available later this year. And for Dustin, let's just get him another veteran. Let's get him in against Ovince St. Peru, who's coming off an impressive win of his own. I think both men would be stoked about that. And then we had some controversy in the main event. Nasruddin Imavov with a round 4 TKO over Jared Cannonier. And this fight was really round 1 and then the rest of the fight. Round 1, Jared looked comfortable. He was getting work in, really just kind of controlling the distance, controlling the where the fight was going, and landing some big shots on the younger Nasruddin. But then the rest of the fight, Nasruddin started coming forward and was just timing Jared with his big strikes and was able to put his speed to work. I was very impressed here with Nasruddin's confidence, his striking mix, and pace throughout this fight. What Nasruddin had done from round 2 to 4, nobody has done that to Jared besides maybe Robert Whittaker quite a few years back. You could say, well, Jared's 40, he's slowing down. But again, he did not show that at all a year ago in a very dominant fight against a very good Marvin Vettori. Yes, the stoppage wasn't ideal here. I wasn't super upset with it. Jared was getting pieced up pretty good for a couple rounds. He was definitely rocked a couple times. Yes, I don't agree with the stoppage immediately, but I don't think it would have changed the course of the fight, and I think he was on his way to getting finished as well. I know the fighters are going to fight for their opportunities, and he said like he was just trying to create distance, and he felt like he got an opportunity taken from him. Jared is also asking for a rematch. I could see that happening in Paris this fall, but I'd rather see different opponents here, especially for how well Nasruddin performed. And he's been on an absolute tear since he's moved down back to the middleweight division. I love Jared, though. The guy's an animal. And yeah, this actual loss with no rematch is going to put him in non-contention pretty much for the rest of his career. But Nasruddin did put it to him for a long time. It wasn't like it was just a couple minutes. Statistically, Jared landed 102 total strikes, 64 of them significant, with a takedown and 1 minute and 10 seconds of control time. And Nasruddin landed 106 total, 82 of those significant. He had 2 takedowns in 3 attempts, and 6 minutes and 18 seconds of control time. So Nasruddin extends his winning streak to 2. He had the no contest, which I thought he would have won against Chris Curtis, but he is 3-1-1 since 2022, and he moves up 3 spots in the rankings to number 4. Jared ends his 2-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak. He is 3-2 since 2022, and only moves down 1 spot to number 5. So what I would love to see, Nasruddin and the also young up-and-coming Brendan Allen, for both of those to have a leap right up into title contention. And for Jared, he could take on a veteran in a fun, violent affair, Roman Dolidze. I think let's just keep the division moving. Solid fight night card, though. Obviously, the stoppage, put a little bit of a damper on this card. I absolutely liked that. There was a lot of violent, quick finishes. The Bruno Ferreira fight, absolutely bonkers. How about Ludovic Klein and Punahele Soriano? Welcome to the damn show. Taylor Lapilus with a nice showing as well. So again, 6.5 out of 10. Solid fight night, which, sets us up for another Apex card. Vegas Fight Night 93. Prelims and the fight a little bit later, back to regular programming. We have 4 p.m. Pacific for the prelims, main card at 7. Both are on ESPN2 or the ESPN app. Now, I would say there's a couple decent matchups in this card. The main event's really the what you want to watch. But this card is really carried by the flyweight division. There's not a lot of depth here, not a lot of big hitters. So I'm previewing this at a 4 out of a 10. So not a massive, excitement here. And we're breaking down 2 prelim fights in the main card, and we're not even breaking down all the main card bouts. So some good fights that we will not break down. We have LFA alums Josh Quinlan and Adam Fugit getting after it. Asu Almabayev taking on Contender Series alum Jose Johnson. Contender Series alums Timmy Kwamba and Lucas Almeida. And Ikram Aliskerov taking on Antonio Tricoli on short notice, like the third to last fight of the night. But let's kick it off in the prelims. We have Jimmy the Brick Flick, 33 years old with a 17-7 record, taking on Nate Mayhem Maness, 32 years old with a 15-3 record. Now, this is a fun flyweight showdown in the prelims. We have two fighters in their primes who are looking to make a mark and move up the rankings as soon as possible. Breaking it down, Jimmy is a Bellator, King of the Cage, LFA, and Contender Series alum. He's on a one-fight winning streak and is 3-2 in the UFC. 15 of his 17 wins are via submission, and 6 of his 7 losses are via knockout. Very grappling-heavy fighter, has been susceptible to being finished. Now, Nate has a blue belt in BJJ. He's on a one-fight winning streak and is 1-2 since 2022. 6 of his 15 wins are via knockout, and he has some length advantages, 4 inches in reach and 3 inches in leg reach. Now, throughout their UFC careers, Nate has definitely fought stiffer competition this far in his UFC tenure. He should have the striking advantage against Jimmy, but with a fight with Jimmy, it's always going to be a wild showcase. You know, he likes to take chances and risks with his hands. He'll throw some crazy strikes out there, jump for legs, try to get leg locks, pulls guard, and wants to get that BJJ going. And with Nate only having a blue belt, anything is possible. I just think Nate's going to be too well-rounded. I think he's going to dominate Jimmy on the feet. For that reason, I'm taking Nate Maness. We putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We have Tagir Ulanbekov, 32 years old with a 16-2 record and the number 12 next to his name, taking on Joshua the Fearless Van, 22 years old with a 10-1 record. Now, what a wild ride for Joshua, as he was originally scheduled to fight Suma Deri, who pulled out due to injury probably 2 months ago. And then he was booked against the young prospect headlining this bout, Tatsuro Taira. But then all of a sudden, a couple weeks out, was ripped and inserted against Tagir Ulanbekov, who didn't have an opponent. And honestly, maybe the toughest matchup for him throughout this chaos. Tagir is a very tough grappling flyweight and will push Josh and show us what he's really capable of here. Breaking this down, Tagir has a Sambo style. He trains with the Dagestanis out of AKA and Eagles MMA. He won gold at the 2014 World Combat Sambo Federation's World Championships. He's a Fight Nights Global alum and former champ. He's on a 2-fight winning streak, is 1-2 since 2022, and he is 4-1 in the UFC since 2020. He also has length. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage and a 4-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Joshua is a Fury FC alum. He's on an 8-fight winning streak, 3-0 in the UFC. And looking at it, I mean, Tagir has not really been super active in the UFC, but he is coming off really nice back-to-back submission victories after a close decision loss to Tim Elliott in 2022. And Joshua has already faced some adversity in his career. He had a back-and-forth fight with Zhalgas Zhumagulov, which was a short-notice UFC debut. And Felipe Bunes put it to him in the round 1 and then had a good round 2. For that reason, I think Tagir is just going to be too dominant with his grappling. I think he's going to find a way for a finish and show Joshua there's levels to this division. So I'm taking Tagir Ulanbekov. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on in the main card, we have Brady Bam Bam Highstand, 25 years old with an 8-2 record, taking on Garrett Armfield, 27 years old with a 10-3 record. Now, this is going to be a fun fight between two young and talented fighters who are really trying to build confidence and become a force in the division, because this is already a very deep and amazingly talented bantamweight division. Breaking it down, Brady trains out of Sick Jitsu in Spokane. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. He is 2-1 in the UFC. 3 of his 7 wins are via knockout, 2 via submission, so 5 of his 7 wins via finish. And he's definitely battled some injuries lately. I think he's pulled out of a couple fights. Garrett is a Cage Fury and LFA alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. He's 2-1 in the UFC since 2022. 6 of his 10 wins are via knockout. 2 of his 3 losses are via submission. Now, both of these guys, well-rounded fighters, good grappling, solid striking. Both fighters should know what's at stake. Although they're young, a loss here puts them just really in a bad spot in the division. They're going to have to fight young up-and-comers and stack up a lot of wins to move up the division. Where a win here puts them in a position to fight in the middle of the division, get some bigger names, and that's right where you want to be as you're itching closer to your primes. I do think this fight, Garrett's striking is going to be the big difference. And I think for that reason, I'm taking Garrett Armfield. I am avoiding him on a parlay, though this is a pretty close match for me. And Brady is also an Ultimate Fighter alum. He got the runner-up against Ricky Tercios in his season finale. Then we have Miles Chapo Johns, 30 years old with a 14-2 record, taking on Douglas Da Silva de Andrade, 38 years old with a 29-5 record. Now, these fighters are at different stages in their careers, 30 and 38, but both are on the winning track and trying to continue to stack up those wins and fight into the rankings of the bantamweight division. Miles is hitting his stride in his prime at 30, and Douglas is just one of those veterans that will show bantamweights there's levels to this game, so this should be a doozy. Breaking it down, Miles is an orthodox fighter. He is an LFA alum and former champion and a Contender Series alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. He had a no contest in there as well, so he's 2-1-1 since 2022. Douglas has a boxing and BJJ style. 2 of his last 4 fights have been performance of the night or fight of the night. He's showing up, he's showing out. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 2-1 since 2022. 20 of his 29 wins are via knockout. Now, both men have serious power in their hands. They're solid grapplers as well. But I believe Miles is going to have the speed advantage to be able to outscore Douglas, steal the rounds. I could see him getting overzealous, though, and Douglas catching him, getting some takedowns, turning this to a grappling match. I just think Miles is the more talented fighter. So with a good plan and not getting overzealous, I think he gets the job done. So I am taking Miles Johns, but I am avoiding this on any parlay where possible. Some close matchups here. Then in the flyweight main event, we have Alex Perez, 32 years old with a 25-8 record and the number 5 next to his name, taking on Tatsuro Taira, only 24 years old, undefeated with a 15-0 record and the number 13 next to his name. Now, when this ended up being the match, this is a serious measuring stick for Tatsuro at only 24 years old. He was originally supposed to fight Tim Elliott, which I thought would have been an awesome match and a good test for him. But Tim withdrew to injury. So then he was going to fight Joshua Van in a prospect fight, which would have been really good. But then last second, he got matched up against Alex Perez on short notice. And not only is Alex in his prime, he has a ton of experience, but he's coming off debatably the biggest knockout of his UFC career that's boosting him full of confidence, and Tatsuro has to plan for this on short notice. Breaking it down, Alex has a wrestling, BJJ, and boxing style. He's a King of the Cage, Cage Fury, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 1-2 since 2022. 7 of his 25 wins are via submission, 6 via knockout, so 13 of his 25 wins are via finish, and 5 of his 8 losses are via submission. Now, Tatsuro has a purple belt in BJJ. He's undefeated on a 15-fight winning streak, 5-0 in the UFC. 7 of his 15 wins are via submission, 4 via knockout, so 11 of his 15 wins come via finish. And he is rocking a 4.5-inch reach advantage. Now, I have no doubt in Tatsuro's ability. I think he's going to be a future champion. But on short notice, at only 24 years old, is he ready to fight the reinvigorated Alex Perez, who is only 2 months removed from the biggest knockout of his career? While I do think that Tatsuro is going to have a chance, I think he could grapple and control Alex if he can get him down or find his way on top. But as long as the fight remains standing, I'm not sure what's going to happen. We have not seen Tatsuro scrap with anybody at this level. I just can't wait to see how it shakes out. For the sake of picking, I'm going with the veteran Alex Perez, but I'm avoiding this on all parlays. This is going to be an absolute fun one to recap next week. But that's the short and sweet Apex card. That is what it is. But next week we are set up back in Saudi Arabia for a stacked fight night card headlined by Robert Whitaker and Khamzat Chimaev. Woo-wee! That's going to be an early day card on ABC. Wake up, get your Irish coffees and whatever you need to get the blood flowing, because I can't wait. This is episode 52. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.